At the Victoria Terminus in Mumbai, India, it always seems to be rush hour. Every day, some 2 million passengers pass through this train station. Coming into Mumbai is often a very intense commute. But in this country of over 1 billion people, the best way to get from point A to B is by riding the rails. In India, the railways are a legacy of British rule. Since the first steam beast rolled down its track in 1853, the Indian railway system has expanded to cover over 38,000 miles of track. Many of the trains still carry stately names, like the Himalayan Queen and Grand Trunk Express, which has traveled nearly the length of the country since 1929. Major cities tend to feed the bulk of India Railway's 4 billion passengers a year, but even rural villagers are rarely more than a day's walk from a station. With over 1.5 million people on staff, India's railways are the world's largest employer. From the Indian Railways Minister down to the key man who makes sure every inch of track is sturdy, the vast workforce keeps this sprawling system running. The railway stations are often a swirling mix of people. Hawkers, porters, and the occasional performance artists vie for travelers' attention and money. But the railway is more than just a way to get around. It is a microcosm of India itself. In the 3-tier berths of second class, people from all over the country, from different classes and cultural backgrounds, find a place to mix. They talk, play games, and tell stories. For travelers, no matter what their destination, the Indian railways are the same.
Alexandra Avakian is a photographer from Geographic magazine. She's come to Iran to capture a side of the country few Westerners know about or have ever seen.
My goal has been to get beyond the cliches and to bring to Americans and Westerners in general a slice of life in Iran, which is far more subtle than what we're used to seeing, and perhaps more real.
What most Westerners do know about is Iran's historic revolution, when the pro-Western Shah was overthrown in 1979 by followers of the Ayatollah Khomeini. Today, Iran is an Islamic state, so to get the story, Alex will have to observe the Islamic dress code, known here as hijab.
Anytime I leave my hotel room, I have to wear Islamic dress in the Islamic Republic. So that really means I have to cover my hair and I have to cover my body, and nobody should be able to tell my weight within 50 pounds.
This is Tehran, Iran's congested capital, and the city is preparing for a celebration. It's the birthday of a revered figure in Shia Islam, and the city is all lit up. The religious celebrations go on long into the night. It's the birthday of a revered figure in Shia Islam, and the city is all lit up. The religious celebrations go on long into the night. To the west, the village of Kandavan is hidden in a valley. Most of the people make their homes in caves that riddle the mountainside. Life here is hard, and residents are mostly herders, weavers, and farmers.
I like to work close to people. Once people relax, you see amazing things in their daily lives.
With only a few days left, Alex heads to Esfahan, famous for its beautiful architecture. She's here to photograph the Imam Mosque.
It's like a jewel. Extraordinary. It's probably the most beautiful mosque I've ever seen. Or even, it's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen.
On Friday, worshippers gather to pray outside the mosque. Afterwards, in the quiet of this beautiful building, she finds the jewel she was looking for.
Obviously, camera means nothing at all. What means something is the brain behind the camera. And when you click the shutter, it's just magic. All these things come together and work.
It is known as the cradle of civilization. Beneath the desert of modern Iraq, in the greatest depths of history, the civilizations of Mesopotamia developed between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Much of what we know has come from the painstaking excavations of ruined cities and intensive translations of clay tablets. Archaeologists have found traces of early agriculture in the north that date back 9,000 years. But recorded history begins further south with a group known as the Sumerians. Around 5000 BC, people settled into an agricultural lifestyle in the fertile alluvial plain fed by the Tigris and Euphrates. In a land of little rainfall, Mesopotamians built dikes, created canals and channels to capture the life-giving floodwaters. These irrigation systems ensured bountiful harvests every year. What developed were the world's first string of cities with names like Ur and Eridu. Crop surpluses allowed the population to expand and its society to flourish. Towns of brick were built with the temple at their center. The temple grounds housed many functions of daily life. There one could find grain stores, a treasury, and quarters for priests, officials, entertainers, and craftsmen. Above it all rose the ziggurat, a holy tower with a spiraling ramp. Kings were revered as representatives of the gods on earth. From this model, towns evolved into city-states and even empires. As society became more complex, people needed tools for recording the trade of animals and food. Using tablets made of raw clay, early Mesopotamians developed cuneiform, the first written language. By pressing wedge-shaped forms into the soft, wet material, they kept transaction records of commodities like sheep and grain. It spread to other uses, and scribes recorded the first major literary work known to Western civilization, the Epic of Gilgamesh, following the story of King Gilgamesh, who embarks on a quest for immortality, but ultimately fails. Perhaps the best known of Mesopotamia's civilizations was Babylon. During the second millennia BC, it rose from a provincial capital to become the center of a kingdom that encompassed southern Iraq and beyond. Its hanging gardens were famous throughout the Western world as an ancient wonder, and its king Hammurabi left his mark with a collection of laws. Hammurabi's code, as it's known today, defined private property as well as legal decisions for crimes, family disputes, and commerce. Although it was eventually lost to the sands of time, Mesopotamia left a legacy of law, literature, engineering, and modern civilizations to build on.
This is one of Northern Ireland's most remarkable and popular sites, a place of science and mythology. People flock each year to see the Giant's Causeway, the Emerald Isle's first World Heritage Site. For some, this honeycomb pattern of 40,000 basalt columns is a geological wonder. For others, like former guide Hill Dick, it's a playground for the mind and the home of a mythical giant named Finn McCool.
Finn was one of the great characters in Irish mythology, or if you like, Irish fact. He had a problem with a Scottish giant who lived 25 miles across the sea, so he decided he would go to Scotland. Finn McCool was not a good swimmer, so he used the material that the volcanoes had left behind to build a causeway to Scotland, and he called it the Giant's Causeway.
With a little bit of imagination, you can find evidence of the legend's truth everywhere you look. But scientists like geologist Patrick McKeever have their own story. They say Giant's Causeway was created by a volcanic event some 60 million years ago, long before humans ever lived in this beautiful corner of the world.
The lava that was erupted very, very quickly, and the flows were very, very thick. Basically, if you picture, like wet mud on a hot day, the mud dries, and as it dries, it shrinks. And as it shrinks, you get cracks forming. And it was basically those conditions that allowed these polygonal hexagonal columns to form.
Since the 1800s, Giant's Causeway and its nearby coast have been major tourist destinations. But you don't have to be a believer to understand their allure.
You can weave your own story around it. You can look at a rock and say, that reminds me of something, or that looks like something.
Look way over in the distance, you will be able to...
And the wonder in the eyes of these children suggests the story of Finn McCool won't fade away.
Trastevere is one of Rome's most ancient neighborhoods. Founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus, its name means literally across the Tiber. But more than a river separates the people of Trastevere from the rest of the city. Trasteverini have always been proud of their origins, believing themselves to be the only true Romans, or Romans of Rome. In the Middle Ages, the neighborhood became a center for working-class fishermen and artisans. Even though the Vatican owns a lot of property here, and even with the monasteries and convents hidden behind high walls, it still has that spirit of a medieval port town. Whether to enjoy home cooking, get lost in winding alleys, or just escape the chaos of central Rome, visitors have always come here in search of the authentic Italy. Now in increasing numbers, the visitors are moving in, driving up housing prices and displacing many old-time residents. Some people fear that recent developments have changed the neighborhood for the worse. Giancarlo Biso has been serving clients at this cafe for 35 years. His old customers are disappearing, and they're taking the spirit of the place along with them.
This bar is more than 70 years old. In the old days, people would buy milk here and carry it home in tin buckets. Women used to come down in their nightgowns to have breakfast. Today, it has become a modern bar like the rest.
But not everyone is so negative about the change. Giovanni Amili has been selling newspapers on Piazza Santa Maria for the past 18 years. From his booth, he has witnessed the restoration.
Before, it was a lot more unstable. There was crime, poverty, and unruliness. Today, the type of community has changed. The neighborhood is safe, but it still keeps its characteristic charm.
Many people say it is its very charm that has led to Trastevere's transformation. The glory of Rome lies in its ability to retain layer upon layer of history, even as the present creates an entirely new city. Trastevere's ancient ruins, medieval alleys, Renaissance churches, and Baroque palaces are all part of that timeless process.